Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the Great Blue Hills. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Kat Harrison. She is here to celebrate Migraine and Mia. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the books of author Melissa Lyons. I Will Always Love You, and Until We Meet Again. You know, helping a friend or a loved one find hope and love in the midst of their grief and loss is one of the most compassionate gifts we can share. When someone you know has suffered a loss, especially when there are grieving children involved, there are two transformational and healing books you can give them. These books offer comfort and words of wisdom from a realm beyond our own. Whether the loss is human or an animal companion, the books I Will Always Love You and Until We Meet Again will be a welcome addition to those looking for a sense of reassurance and possibly a sign that their loved ones are still looking out for them. See me in your dreams and in your mind's eye. Imagine me free and able to fly. Those are the words from our sponsor, Melissa Lyons. For more information about her books, I Will Always Love You and Until We Meet Again, please visit her website, melissa-lyons.com. Joining us right now from the great state of Michigan, our guest today is here to celebrate her brand new picture book. I think it's pretty important, and I'm excited to talk about it. The book is called Migraine and Mia. Please welcome to the show, Kat Harrison. Hey, Kat, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I love podcasts, so this is very exciting.
Are podcasts cool?
They're the best. I like it so much better than like TV. I think it's like radio of the future.
You know, it's interesting to say radio of the future, because I've been a fan of what was radio theater and talk shows since I was a kid. And I remember being in middle school, and me and my buddies, we did this thing we called tape radio, because we would create little radio shows on cassette tapes and we trade them back and forth. And me and two buddies actually had a show we called the Sports Nuts. And we'd sit down and we would talk about sports. And it was probably pretty obnoxious considering we were in 7th and 8th grade. But it was a lot of fun. And today, to think about today, that a show like Joe Rogan's podcast has more listeners than CNN. That blows my mind.
Times are changing, especially in media.
Yeah.
There's so many more options now. I think about social media. It's actually like where I've done the majority of my marketing. It's how I found you. Things are just different than they used to be. But I like it. I'm here for it. I'm on the younger side, so I've kind of taken to all of that quite nicely.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited because it gives everybody a voice. Some of those voices are kind of obnoxious, and I don't want to listen to a lot of voices out there. But it gives people people and communities a voice that otherwise wouldn't have had that voice. And I think that that's really exciting, and I think it's going to really help make the world a better place eventually.
So actually what you said about giving kind of a voice to people who don't have it, I mean, that's exactly why I wrote Migraine and Mia. So I have been chronically ill for 18 years. I've had chronic migraine for that long. So for those who don't know, chronic migraine means you have at least 15 migraine episodes a month. I pretty much always have a low-grade migraine every single day. And it's because I actually had a pretty serious surgery when I was a teen and had an infection, and the antibiotics I had to take actually wiped out my vestibular system. So that means that the world bounces for me all the time, and that's what causes me to have migraine. And so because of that, I've always been really passionate about chronic illness advocacy. It's what I do professionally, and that is what I mostly write about.
I don't suffer from migraines, but my beautiful wife does. Not to the extent that you do, but it's pretty serious. And I was sharing with Kat the day that she reached out to me, that same day, just probably 3 hours before she reached out to me to be on the show, I had a conversation with my amazing niece. And as we were going into the gym, she was sharing with me that she also suffers from migraines occasionally. They're different. A migraine is different than a regular headache. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think it's wild to me because it's actually a very common condition, but people, you're right, do experience them in a lot of frequency. But what makes them different than a headache is all the other symptoms that accompany them. And the other wild thing is that there are like 10 types of migraine. There may actually be more than that. You can actually have a migraine without any pain at all. You can have all the other symptoms in terms of visual disturbances, nausea, something I experience a lot. I occasionally lose my vision. You could be really dizzy. You could have adverse reaction to smells and tastes. So all of that is what makes it a migraine and not just a headache. And they're not usually receptive to over-the-counter meds. I think a lot of times people are like, take some Tylenol. I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. So I think that that's what makes them. They're also just extremely debilitating. I mean, when you have a bad one, that's it. Like you're in bed possibly for days. Most people are, at least. Since I have them all the time, I'm higher functioning, but only because I have to be.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something that surprised me, and you mentioned that a person can have a migraine without any pain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what to ask you, but can you expand on that?
I don't get them often, but basically it's like, I feel like once you know all of the other symptoms that you typically get with a migraine, you can feel all those things together, and that's what you know is happening. I think the other thing people don't realize is the migraine is not just the core attack. There's something called the prodrome, which is all of the symptoms leading up to a really bad attack, and that's how people who experience them often know it's coming. For instance, yawning is a really big part of the prodrome. So if I find myself getting extra fatigued, even though I slept 10 hours the night before, I know a really bad one's coming. And there's also the postdrome, which is migraine hangover. And it feels like you drank a bottle of tequila, even if all you did was had a migraine. So it's much more complex, I think, than many people realize. And a lot of kids get it, which is a big reason why I wrote the book.
Wow. This is really fascinating. So Migraine and Mia is a story about a little girl with migraines?
Yes, exactly. It's actually like not meant to be super character driven. What's interesting to me is actually like the 20 million drafts that existed before the final copy. I never actually wrote a character into it. It had gone through a bunch of iterations of titles, but my publisher was like, people will connect to it more if it has, a character in it. But I really wanted it to be just a sensory experience of a migraine, because I think that is the misconception, right? Like it is hard to smell. It can feel like so many different types of things. So I wanted to write a book that encapsulated that while also making it fun, obviously. Gotta have a little bit of both.
Yeah, it does have to be fun. But it also is, I think it's a great way for kids to start to understand this. Certainly kids who are experiencing migraines, this would be very helpful, I'm sure, to just to kind of understand what's happening to my body, to my head.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the way I wrote it, I wanted it to be for many different types of experiences. I wanted it to be for kids that actually get the pain, and maybe so parents understand it better. I wanted it to be a classroom tool where if someone misses a lot of school, maybe they would understand why. Wanted it to be a tool someone's parents had migraine. There's also there are no books about the condition. For as many people experience it, there are no children's books. And I was just like, I'm feeling it. I'm going in. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. Mentioning about having Migraine and Mia in the classroom, we talk a lot about books being wonderful tools that can serve as windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And we talk a lot about that in terms of helping kids experience and understand different cultures and how important it is for the kids to see themselves in the pages of books. But I'm thinking that this is a really important window into the lives of kids with migraines, because, I don't know, you probably experienced at some point some well-meaning person, you mentioned earlier, some well-meaning person said to you, take a couple of Tylenol, you'll be fine. I'm sure other people have said to you, it's just a headache. Can't you walk it off and just,
It is, that's probably like one of the most my common pet peeves, but it's the thing I try and step out of that sometimes because I've lived with it for so long and question, why does someone say that? What makes them want to say it? And I think at the heart of it is just someone wanting to help. And I think it makes them feel better to be positive or to brush it off. But I think because you can't see it most of the time, like you don't know how much pain is in unless perhaps you live with someone and you see them in bed, you can't tell what someone's going through. And I think that does make it very hard. But I think that books are an amazing tool to foster empathy on a variety of subjects, both visually and also listening to stories like that. So that was definitely one of my goals as well.
You spoke earlier about the fact that you believe that your migraines were caused by an infection you received after surgery that messed with your vestibular system. We're learning a lot. I know that the vestibular system isn't just about balance. It's actually is, important in the way that we talk and learn how to read and communicate with each other and focus and have attention. So it's a really important part of our mind, our brain. Is there any way that you can work with that to help it? And again, I'm not forming a question right. I don't know if my vestibular system is failing me right now, but
Great.
I think you know what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. So I think that this is something I also think about, which is we take for granted all the amazing systems that our body has intrinsically connected in. We don't even think about it. Our lungs breathe, our heart beats, but we're not constantly thinking about those systems. And I think the vestibular system is just like that. I took for granted what it does for you. To me, the biggest shock was the fact that it actually stabilizes your vision. It's what allows you to look at a singular object and say, that is the object, I see it. And that is actually one of the symptoms I started experiencing. I remember so vividly, I was sitting in, I think it was my social studies class, and we were about to take a test. And the test was actually on my desk, but I couldn't see it because I was picturing a piece of paper floating around the floor. So I started crawling around the floor, and my teacher was like, Kat, what are you doing? And that is when I knew that something was wrong. And by the time we were able to kind of stop the med, it had been too late on what they call a wipeout case, which means that there was no hope of coming back from the damage. It's taken me a very long time to get to this point. You have to do a lot of things to keep your vestibular system active. But at the same time, you also have to rest significantly more than other people. So I really try and sleep 10 hours a night. It's how I have the visual energy to like do something like this, to have a full-time job, to write also. If I get less sleep than that, I'm very, very dizzy. And I don't try not to drive a ton. I use tools in the kitchen that make chopping and things like that a little bit easier, but you do learn to live with it, but it's taken me a long time to get to this point.
Yeah. Boy, it's something that affects so many people, but we know so little about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Health is wild that way. That's why it's been so interesting. So I had my first book, Surgery on Sunday, was also released in the pandemic, and it's been odd to release 2 health-focused books during a global pandemic when everyone is talking about health. And it's so interesting to me because I feel like for the first time, really in my lifetime, and maybe in many people's lifetime, people care about their health. They're making choices that make them safer. They're really thinking about their mortality. But people who live with chronic illness literally think that every single day. Every choice I make may have a consequence. If I take a shower, I'm probably not going to be able to cook dinner. Like, these are the choices I have to make in a single day that no one even realizes. So part of me is, obviously I'm not thankful for any of this, but I have kind of enjoyed people's perspective being broadened, but I also am a little like, welcome to the party, everyone. Like, there are tons of us who live this every day. Welcome aboard.
Yeah. What's been the reaction to the books?
I mean, it's been so wonderful. I'm so happy because, as many people in publishing know, you get a lot of no's before you get a yes. And I think the most common thing I heard, and this is not unique to me, but was like, there is no market for something as niche as a surgery book, as a migraine book. And I just kept hearing that over and over, but they weren't saying your writing is bad. They were saying your writing is good, but no one's going to buy it. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I'm going to find someone. I'm going to find someone that believes in it. So my publisher is amazing, saw what I wanted to do all along, brought these babies into the world with me. And it's been really incredible. The Duchess of York actually read Surgery on Sunday and did a story time, which was really incredible. And then with Migraine and Mia, the American Migraine Foundation actually wrote a fact sheet for the back of the book, which has just been an incredible collaboration. I've worked with them in my advocacy work. And so it's been nice for it all to come full circle.
Well, we have to give your publisher a shout out. Yes,
Warren Publishing. They're based in North Carolina. They're very tiny, but that was the way to go. I think that you need someone who believes in your vision. I also really think it's important for authors to fight for the stories of their heart. Like, I think that when you want to be published, everyone has this grand idea of like, I'm going to get published by the big six. Like, this is going to be great. I'm going to make a ton of money. Publishing is not like that. It's very difficult to break into that. And I knew that these stories were important to me. And I know that they're important to kids. Heard stories of people having, for a while there, no one was having elective surgeries. But when kids started having surgeries again, them reciting parts of the book when they got to the hospital. When I hear those stories, I'm like, I did it. It doesn't matter what people thought of the book because the kids benefit from it. And that's really all I care about.
Yeah. Did you always envision yourself being a children's author?
No, not at all. I've always wanted to be, I've been a writer from the day I was born practically, but I've always, in my professional life, I write primarily for adults. I work for The Mighty, which is a community for people with mental illness, chronic illness, disability. Do we sense a theme? And I always thought my first book would be more of a memoir. But it takes so much endurance to write a very long book. So I've always loved picture books. I used to be a parenting magazine editor in New York City. And so I don't think it's surprising, but it definitely was never my original goal. But now I love it. I love picture books so much. I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Do you have, and I know many authors are loath to kind of give us previews of what they might be working on, but are there any other issues that you're looking to write about for kids?
Yes. So working on a story right now that's been a little bit of a departure for me and concentrating more on mental health. It's a book that uses the metaphor of a magnifying glass for anxiety. So I'm trying a different kind of style of writing as well. I like to challenge myself. I don't like to write. Even my two books are kind of written in different ways. One's more plot-based. One is not and uses metaphor heavily. So yes, working on other books. Part of me wants to stray away from health. Because I don't know if that's all I want to be known for. But at the same time, I am the person to write a lot of these books. I think if you live it every day, I kind of owe it to the world to write that perspective, because not everyone else can. So I feel like it's kind of my MO in a way, my life's duty.
Now, there may be parents out there who are listening who may be experiencing some issues. They may be experiencing migraines on some level and they don't realize it, or maybe their kids, are experiencing something. What are some of the signs that a parent can be aware of that might tell them, I need to get my kid into a doctor to see if they're suffering from migraines?
Yeah, I think that if the pain is lasting a long time, I think the thing where you get the headache versus migraine conversation is headaches can be short-lived. Sure, you can have a headache all day. It definitely happens. There are other types of headaches that are not migraine, but a migraine can last 3-4 before. I had a 2-week migraine once. Let's not get into that. But I think if your kid is saying like, I'm in pain consistently, I think if they're throwing up, I think if they talk about their vision being weird, I don't think if they have a very strong appetite. And even for adults, I would look for the exact same things. The other thing that I would like to caution is that not all neurologists are created equal. Some are more generalists. They may work more in things like MS or stroke, etc. But there are headache specialists. And I think if you suspect that you could have migraine or someone you love has migraine, I would encourage you to seek out people who specialize in headaches. You're just going to have such better rate in terms of medications that might work. You might get straight to the heart of the issue versus dancing around it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've discovered is that medicine is a science, but there's a little bit of art to it too, because we are all different and medications react differently in different people, that oftentimes it's, you know, I know that some healthcare systems want to kind of operate of, this person exhibits A, B, and C, then we give them this pill or that pill.
Yes.
And it's much more complex than that.
I think, so to me, one of the biggest lessons in my journey is that you have as much of a stake in your care as a doctor. And that, it seems really obvious, but I think a lot of times we put doctors on pedestals. And I'm not saying that in a way that's like, they're worthy, like there's a reason why they have those positions, but they don't know your body. So I always say that you know your body best, you know what you're feeling, and sometimes you have to advocate a little bit more intensely for it depending on who you're seeing. I always recommend coming super prepared for appointments. I always like to have a list of questions because I think that sometimes the power dynamics in a patient-doctor relationship can be difficult to navigate, but if you have it written down, you go in with the plan. I also recommend bringing someone with you always, or a child obviously would have a parent with them, but it's good to have someone who knows your wishes and who can advocate alongside of you. Because I do think it's difficult to navigate. It is an art form. You said it perfectly.
Yeah. And I really like that you are suggesting that, yes, doctors have a lot of skill. They have a lot of, obviously have a lot of training, a lot of knowledge, but they shouldn't be up on a pedestal. And,
it's dangerous, actually.
Yes, they
to
could
put someone
fall.
up on a pedestal.
They could fall.
Exactly.
Fall on me. I don't want that.
They're human. I think the other thing we have to realize is that, like, not every patient is meant for a certain type of doctor, right? Some people like really technical doctors who will explain every crevice of an organ. Some of us like people with really, really amazing bedside manner. So I think that's the other thing. You have to find, it's like a therapist. You could shop for a therapist, right? You got to find the person that challenges you but doesn't push you too far. I'm the same way. I have left doctors because we just haven't gelled. I need someone I can really trust who listens to me. That to me is always the key ingredient. If they listen to you and they don't doubt you, then you're golden. You probably have the right fit for you.
Yeah. And I really like what you said. Unless you're in a rural town in most northern Alaska, you have choices. And, you know, even if you're in an HMO and they know they really want you to stick with this doctor, it's like, no, I can have another doctor. You need to be able to advocate for yourself. Bring somebody in who can advocate for you if you can't do that. But you're responsible in a huge way for your health.
Absolutely. And telehealth has kind of changed the game. Like, that has been a really big positive over the last year and a half. Healthcare has gotten accessible in some ways. I actually continuing to meet with my neurologist virtually. It saves me the energy of having to go there. He truly doesn't need to see me physically since we're talking about invisible pain. I've been going there so long. So I do think you have options. I have heard of people living in rural areas where that can be definitely trickier. But never feel like you have to settle for the care you're getting if you're not happy with it.
Absolutely. I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Migraine and Mia and find out more about Kat Harrison.
Okay, well, my website is kat.writesforyou.com. I sell signed copies of both of my books there, but they're available wherever books are sold. And then I also can be on Instagram. It's probably where I'm most active, and my handle is XOCat.
We've had a great and really eye-opening conversation with the author of Migraine and Mia, brand new picture book from our guest, Kat Harrison. Kat, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Tashay Mason. Tashay is joining us once again to talk about her brand new book, It's Okay to Be Happy. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Kat Harrison. Be sure to check out Migraine and Mia. Also want to thank our sponsor, the books by Melissa Lyons. Please be sure to check them out. I want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Maury Grady, Michael Murphy. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.